Citizenship. You will never know how much it has cost my generation to preserve your freedom. I hope you will make good use of it. John Adams. Freedom isn't free. In ancient times, there was no such thing as citizenship. In the world of monarchies, there was royalty and nobility, and there were subjects. Most people, commoners that is, were all subjects of the throne. But in the Greco-Roman era of world dominance, the concept of citizenship came into vogue. It was citizenship that helped to make Rome so successful, because conquered territories were offered the ability to assimilate and become Roman citizens as opposed to conquered slaves. This lure of citizenship in the greatest superpower of that day, the Roman Empire, was only offered to free people and put everyone on an equal footing. All citizens had the same rights, privileges, and protections under the law. This was a great attraction in a time when most people around the world were subjects. Additionally, Roman citizenship, much like American citizenship today, was respected around the world. So, citizenship was a point of pride as well as status. Over the centuries, citizenship has become standard in many countries, but it was not always that way, and in most every case, citizenship had to be paid for with blood, especially in the case of the United States of America. Citizenship is the greatest prize of liberty. Only a free person can enjoy the liberty of citizenship. This is a liberty that slaves, subjects, and people who live in oppressive countries can only dream of. Thus, your individual, personal freedom and liberty is codified in the term citizenship. Yet all too often, in the modern times, citizenship is taken for granted. This is because the average person did not pay anything for their freedom. As we all know, there is a natural tendency to devalue what you did not sacrifice for and what did not cost you anything. This is the plight of our society today, because the average person in America has never sacrificed for the cause of freedom. They tend to devalue it. Citizenship. 1. A native or naturalized member of a state or nation who owes allegiance to its government and is entitled to its protection, as distinguished from an alien. 2. An inhabitant of a city or town, especially one entitled to its privileges or franchises. Dictionary.com. The native of a city or an inhabitant who enjoys the freedom and privileges of the city in which he resides, as distinguished from a foreigner or one not entitled to its franchises. Webster's 1828 dictionary. Miles Monroe defines citizenship as the constitutional rights and privileges bestowed upon an individual, guaranteeing legal status to the individual, which is protected by the laws of the country. Yet, in ancient times, citizenship was highly prized, coveted, and sought after. In fact, people would sacrifice years of their lives in order to one day attain citizenship. When the word got out to enslaved people in this country that if they fought on behalf of the Union at the end of the conflict, they would receive their freedom, they escaped and flocked to Union camps to offer their services, all in the hope of freedom and citizenship. Further, when full citizenship was denied to Black Americans in the early 20th century, people from every nationality fought to overturn that injustice, realizing that if one person could be denied their rights and was not free, then no one was free. Therefore, it would behoove us to, at the very least, begin to study and learn about the sacrifices that were paid in order for us to enjoy the freedoms that we take for granted. Citizens versus subjects. The difference between citizens and subjects. Subjects is derived from the Latin words sub and jaceo, and means one who is under the power of another. But a citizen is a unit of mass of free people who collectively possess sovereignty. Subjects look up to a master, but citizens are so far equal that none have hereditary rights superior to others. In the eye of reason and philosophy, the political condition of citizens is more exalted than that of noblemen. Dukes and earls are the creatures of kings and may be made by them at pleasure, but citizens possess in their own right original sovereignty. Like it or not, subjects are not the same as citizens. Subjects are subjugated or conquered people who are in a position of servitude as a result of conquest. Additionally, people in countries under various forms of oppressive governments, such as socialism, communism, or totalitarianism, typically do not have true citizens, but are more like subjects of those governments. For example, Article 36 in the Constitution of the People's Republic of China states that no state, organ, public organization, or individual may compel citizens to believe in or not believe in any religion, nor may they discriminate against citizens who believe in or do not believe in any religion. Yet in China, the church was forced to go underground due to the persecution and human rights violations that were pervasive under the current socialist government. Ultimately, subjects have no rights. Their privileges come from the government and can therefore be taken away by the government at their pleasure, while citizens, on the other hand, have rights that are protected from government incursion. This was the state of the American colonists in the 1700s. They were subjects of Great Britain and had little to no rights. They had left England in order to put distance between themselves and the monarchy and to build a new life of religious freedom. But the policies of King George III were reaching across the ocean and oppressing the colonists. This oppression is what ultimately led to the colonists' revolt against King George III and England. On July 4th, 1776, a delegation of statesmen from all the colonies came together and put in writing a formal declaration of dissolution from the government of England by penning the following words.
When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, a decent respect requires that they declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. To secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. And whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to establish new government. We therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, do and with the authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved of all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved. In the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.
Active citizenship. Wherever the people are well informed, they can be trusted with their own government. Thomas Jefferson. Citizenship is a wonderful privilege and responsibility, yet most Americans take their citizenship for granted and therefore fail to be vigilant as it relates to the duties of citizenship. But our republic requires active participation at all levels of government in order to preserve it. Because of our collective political lethargy, America is in danger now because of the ignorance of its citizens. Our failure to stay engaged over several generations has led to special interest groups that don't have America in mind, corrupt politicians, rampant immorality, a total lack of accountability, and many other problems. The 7 keys of citizenship. There are keys to good and active citizenship, things that we all need to know, understand, and do. It is important to understand that the state of sin and immorality that exists in men is reason for citizens to always be prayerful and vigilant concerning the decisions made by leaders and the course of the nation.
Everything gets smaller as the government gets bigger. Liberty gets smaller, individuality gets smaller, goodness gets smaller, and human character gets smaller.
We must understand that politicians and groups that promote big government through increased services, mandates, and laws are actually enemies of freedom. They will very cleverly use causes that seem compassionate in order to stoke the fears of people so that they can enact laws that will expand government, thereby giving them the power that they crave over your life. We must also understand that while there are many foreign threats without, our greatest threats are domestic or within our borders. Our greatest threats are the people who promote policies and paradigms that erode and steal our freedom and liberty. Therefore, good citizenship requires vigilance that is aware and stands against the incursions of government, whether at the local, state, or federal levels.
One of the most important differences between the left and the right is how each regards the role and the size of the government. The left believes that the state should be the most powerful force in society. Among many other things, the government should be in control of educating every child, should provide all health care, and should regulate often to the minutest detail how businesses conduct their business. In Germany, for instance, the government legislates the time of day stores have to close. In short, there should ideally be no power that competes with government. Not parents, not businesses, not private schools, not religious institutions, not even the individual human conscience. Conservatives, on the other hand, believe the government's role in society should be limited to absolute necessities, such as national defense, and to being the resource of last resort to help citizens who cannot be helped by family, by community, or by religious and secular charities. Conservatives understand that as governments grow in size and power, the following will inevitably happen. 1. There will be ever-increasing amounts of corruption. Power and money breed corruption. People in government will sell government influence for personal and political gain, and people outside government will seek to buy influence and favors. In Africa and Latin America, government corruption has been the single biggest factor holding nations back from progressing. 2. Individual liberty will decline. With a few exceptions, such as an unrestricted right to abortion, individual liberty is less important to the left than to the right. This is neither an opinion nor a criticism. It is simple logic. The more control the government has over people's lives, the less liberty people have. 3. Countries with ever-expanding governments will either reduce the size of their government or eventually collapse economically. Every welfare state ultimately becomes a Ponzi scheme, relying on new payers to pay previous payers. And when it runs out of the new payers, the scheme collapses. All the welfare states of the world, including wealthy European countries, are already experiencing this problem to varying degrees. 4. In order to pay for an ever-expanding government, taxes are constantly increased. But at a given level of taxation, the society's wealth producers will either stop working, work less, hire fewer people, or move their business out of the state or out of the country. 5. Big government produces big deficits and ever-increasing and ultimately unsustainable debt. This, too, is only logical. The more money the state hands out, the more money people will demand from the state. No recipient of free money has ever said, "Thank you, I have enough." Unless big governments get smaller, they will all eventually collapse under their own weight, with terrible consequences socially as well as economically. 6. The bigger the government, the greater the opportunities for doing great evil. The 20th century was the most murderous century in recorded history. And who did all this killing? Big governments. Evil individuals without power can do only so much harm. But when evil individuals take control of a big government, the amount of harm they can do is essentially unlimited. The right fears big government. The left fears big business. But Coca-Cola can't break into your house or confiscate your wealth. Only big government can do that. As irresponsible as any big business has ever been, it is only big government that can build concentration camps and commit genocide. 7. Big government eats away at the moral character of a nation. People no longer take care of other people. After all, they know the government will do that. That's why Americans give far more of their money and volunteer far more of their time to charity than do Europeans at the same economic level. Without the belief in an ever-expanding government, there is no left. Without a belief in limited government, there is no right. I'm Dennis Prager.
Citizenship should provide and require the following things from a free people: purpose, setting your own direction; freedom, taking charge of your own life; money, the ability to be autonomous, having enough money to live well; home, a place where you belong, a place of safety; help or community, needing help is part of citizenship. Citizens are needed and have needs. We are all part of a whole. Life, living fully and making a difference, contributing to the community and making a difference in other people's lives. And finally, love, family, marriage, friendship, intimacy, relationships, loving and being loved. The rights, duties, and responsibilities of citizenship. Acts 22:25-29. But when they had stretched him out for the whips, Paul said to the centurion who was standing by, "Is it lawful for you to flog a man who is a Roman citizen uncondemned?" When the centurion heard this, he went to the tribune and said to him, "What are you about to do? For this man is a Roman citizen." So the tribune came and said to him, "Tell me, are you a Roman citizen?" And he said, "Yes." The tribune answered, "I bought this Roman citizenship for a large sum." Paul said, "But I am a citizen by birth." So those who were about to examine him withdrew from him immediately. And the tribune also was afraid, for he realized that Paul was a Roman citizen and that he had bound him. In the passage above, Paul used his Roman citizenship to avoid being tortured. This was one of the rights and privileges of Roman citizens. They had the right to a fair trial before being convicted and punished. They also had the right to appeal their case to Caesar. These were amazing rights that were totally unheard of previously in the ancient world. But these are things that we take for granted in our society today. Citizenship is essentially a contract between the government and the citizen. This contract requires things of both parties so that there is mutual benefit. Citizens have rights, and it is the duty of the government to protect those rights. But it is even more important that the citizens understand their rights. Otherwise, you won't know when they are being violated. Imagine if Paul didn't know his rights as a Roman citizen. That would have been one more beating that he would have received by simply not knowing his rights. There are many enemies of citizenship, such as tyranny, deceit, apathy, and so forth. But perhaps the greatest enemy of citizenship is ignorance. On the subject of ignorance, the Bible states in Hosea 4:6, "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge." What we don't know can bring destruction on our lives as well as our cities, states, and nation. Failure to be informed or to seek the necessary information is what has caused this nation to spiral down from her previous glory. Duties and responsibilities of citizens. But citizenship also requires things of the citizen, both duties and responsibilities. Duties are actions that are required of citizens by law. Responsibilities are things that citizens are strongly encouraged to do but are not legally mandatory. In the United States, a citizen's duties include 1. Your allegiance, 2. Obeying the law, 3. Paying taxes, 4. Defending the nation, 5. Serving in court, and 6. Attending school. These are things that citizens are required to do by law. While not enforced by law in the United States, the responsibility of good, active citizenship is 1. Being informed about the issues and voting, 2. Respecting the property and rights of others, 3. To participate in your community to make it better, and 4. Respect the opinions of others. Rights of citizens. In every nation, the rights of citizenship will vary, but in the United States, citizens' rights are enumerated in the U.S. Constitution and in the Bill of Rights. But how many citizens have ever taken the time to read those documents upon which our nation was founded? Now let's examine the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. As citizens, we have certain rights which have been carefully articulated in the Constitution, specifically in the Bill of Rights. But how many citizens have actually read and are familiar with the Bill of Rights? Let's look briefly at them. The First Amendment: freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of assembly. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. The Second Amendment: the right to bear arms. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The Third Amendment: freedom from quartering. No soldier shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law. The Fourth Amendment: protection from unreasonable search and seizure. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. The Fifth Amendment: the right to due process of law. No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia when in actual service in time of war or public danger, nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. The Sixth Amendment: the right to a speedy public trial, to confront witnesses against you, to have a defense attorney. In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witnesses against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defense. The Seventh Amendment: the right of trial by jury in common law matters. In suits at common law, where the value in controversy shall exceed $20, the right of trial by jury shall be preserved, and no fact tried by a jury shall be otherwise re-examined in any court of the United States than according to the rules of the common law. The Eighth Amendment: protection from excessive bail or fines and against cruel and unusual punishment. Excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. The Ninth Amendment: protection of other rights not mentioned. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. The 10th Amendment limits the power of the federal government to what is written in the Constitution. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people. These rights and more, actually 27, have been enumerated and enshrined in our United States Constitution as the rights that we the people have, which protect us from the government. This is the key point that many people don't seem to understand. Our rights were given to protect us from our government. The framers understood that government is never to be given too much power. The default setting of government can never be fully trusted because it will always try to get more power over the people and override their rights. When citizens are apathetic, their apathy empowers and emboldens bureaucrats to steal.